While the total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases continues to rise globally, scientists are still looking for the source of the virus. In this regard, the Wuhan Institute of Virology has been at the forefront. They have been key to sequencing the COVID-19 genome and are now working to track the source and develop a vaccine. But despite this institute's best efforts, they have been wrongfully targeted by rumors. And earlier, my colleague Liu Xin spoke to virologist Shi Zhengli from this lab. Dr. Shi's vital work has earned her the nickname Batwoman. The activity inside the Wuhan lab from the early days until now has piqued the world's interest. So, can she set the record straight? Here's more.
Dr. Shi, thank you so much for accepting our interview. Let's focus on one of the key issues here that was mentioned in this McCall report, which is the date on which the Wuhan Institute of Virology identified the genome sequence of SARS-CoV-2 and when it published this information online and shared with the rest of the world. So according to this report, it is said that the WIV already confirmed the genome sequence of the virus by January the 2nd, but you waited till January the 12th, around January the 12th, to make public that information or to share that information with the rest of the world. Exactly what happened around January the 2nd, around that date? Could you help us understand?
确实，我们团队是在2019年12月30号。 It
is true that our team first received the sample of an unidentified pneumonia on December 30th, 2019. Later, we detected a type of novel coronavirus on December 31st, and the full genome sequence of the virus was determined on January 2nd, 2020. However, we only had a preliminary drafted outline of this sequence, meaning that more work needed to be done before we could determine the accurate sequence of the virus, such as some final checks and supplementing some missing sequences. Therefore, we could not release the genome sequence immediately after it was detected. We had to make sure the sequence was more accurate before we could release it to the international community. In addition, when we identify the cause of a disease, the genome sequence of the virus alone is not enough. We needed to isolate the virus, test it on animals, and check the epidemiological data. So it would take us some time to finally identify the cause of the disease. And we released the sequence prior to the identification of the novel coronavirus as the cause of the pneumonia.
Could you help us understand the exact date, for instance, that you confirmed the full genome sequence of this virus, and the date when the CDC, the China CDC, because they were also involved in similar work, and then you released with the word. Could you give us the timeline according to your understanding?
So, 我们是1月2号拿到序列以后，我们自己实验室进一步的核对。
After completing the sequence on January 2nd and conducting a further verification in our laboratory, we had to conduct other experiments to complete the missing sequences. Meanwhile, by following solid guidance, along with our own facility, the other two labs were actually working on this simultaneously. As a matter of discipline and rigor, we needed all three labs to run a check on the sequence to determine which strain will eventually be reported to the WHO. On January 11th, 2020, we, the CDC, and the Institute of Pathogen Biology under the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences concurrently compared and matched the sequences, and finally decided on an accurate sequence, and then submitted it to the WHO on January 12th, Beijing time.
然后于北京时间1月12号释放到提交给世界卫生组织。
So I saw a report by Xinhua, which was published in January this year, which says that on January the 5th, WIV isolated the strain, the virus strain of SARS-CoV-2. Is that information accurate? And what's the relationship between confirming the genome sequence of the virus to isolating the strain of the virus?
The sequence is the genetic information of the virus. In order to continue our research, we needed to obtain a living sample by isolating the virus. Therefore, it is not enough just to know the sequence of a virus. Sequencing is analogous to arranging building blocks, where 4 different blocks are sorted into distinct orders to form a genetic background. And the virus is an actual living organism.
So how long? Yeah, how long will it take normally to do the genome sequencing and then to complete the isolation of the virus strain and then to do the animal testing? Normally, how long would that take?
We finished all the work within the least amount of time possible. We were able to complete the whole genome sequence within 48 hours and isolate the virus in 5 days. So this is the shortest possible time needed. We're currently using a technology that enables us to do the work before the virus is isolated, and it is called an undifferentiated high-throughput sequencing technology. The high-throughput sequencing could be done before the isolation of the pathogenic virus. The isolation of the pathogenic virus was done on January 5th, and it came after the whole genome sequence of the virus was determined. The whole genome sequence only told us the genetic information of the virus, but we still didn't know its basic biological characteristics. So this would require us to perform an isolation of the virus and subsequent animal infection experiments before we could determine if it was a definitive pathogen that caused the pneumonia.
So there was an article which was quoted by the McCall report, which was published on Scientific America. The article is called "How China's Batwoman Hunted Down Viruses from SARS to the New Coronavirus." And there was a very vivid paragraph which described you scrambling through your file from work to make sure that none of your research work over the past to the virus of SARS had not leaked or had not accidentally been released to cause the COVID-19. And then after you realized that nothing went wrong, you gave a big sigh of relief. It was very vivid. Did you give that interview? Was this information accurate?
Yes. 是的，我是被那个记者邱健的采访过。
Yes, I was interviewed by a journalist. Indeed, after we received the samples from a hospital on December 30th, 2019, we ran a test on the virus using the nucleic acid test method for coronaviruses, including SARS-related coronaviruses. We first found that 5 of them tested positive for SARS-related coronavirus, but we did not get the genetic sequence at that time. I was very surprised because our team has been engaging in coronavirus research for a long time.
我当时感到很吃惊，因为我们的团队长期从事冠状病毒研究方面的工作。那么我从我自己本着一个科学和负责任的态度，我首先要核对一下我们实验室。
With a scientific and responsible attitude, I checked our laboratory's research on bat coronaviruses first. Then, at noon on December 31st, we got the partial genetic sequence of the virus. After comparing the sequence of this virus with the published and unpublished virus sequences in our lab, we concluded that this was a novel coronavirus. That was when I confirmed that it was a newly discovered virus and had nothing to do with a lab leak or anything else.
和实验室的泄露以及任何其他都没有关系。
But this article was also used to show that maybe perhaps you had not much confidence in the safety of the lab. How do you react to that?
我觉得用我的这个对这个。
I think it is very inappropriate to use my genuine and responsible commitment to science as a reason to attack me. It is also an irresponsible act that goes against scientific common sense and misleads the public. As a scientist and someone who has been doing research on coronaviruses, when I find a pathogen of this kind in the city, it is natural that I need to rule out the risks of a lab leak. That is a responsible scientific attitude. Even though I have full confidence in the safety of my lab, we still need to rule out this risk, because it is part of tracing the origin of the virus. If we're talking about tracing the origin of a disease, we first have to rule out the possibility of a lab contamination or lab leak. And then we need to find out how it spreads to society from nature. All of this is part of my tracing work. My first reaction was to check my lab to see if there was a problem. But that didn't mean I had no confidence in the lab's operation. It was only out of responsibility.
首先要看看我的实验室有没有问题，但这并不代表我对我实验室的操作没有信心。我觉得是我的一个责任心所致。
So there is certain, however, probability or possibility that a virus could escape by accident from a virology lab. How high is that probability from the Wuhan Institute of Virology? Because this is a level 4 biosafety lab, supposed to be the highest in the world. The kind of risk you were fearing just now, is that within, according to your understanding, the normal range of risks of accidents for such labs, or is that higher than what should be under such a high safety biolab?
从我对生物安全实验室的理解，可以说我们所有的高等级生物安全实验室从事的都是高致病性病原微生物。
From my understanding of biosafety labs, all our research on highly pathogenic microorganisms is conducted in our high-level biosafety labs. So the reason that we set up these labs is to ensure that the pathogens we are researching won't be leaked outside of the lab during the research. We have a set of strict management measures. We have rigorous trainings for our personnel. And all this kind of work is to ensure that the risk of laboratory leakage is minimized. Our labs have been running for a long time. The Wuhan Institute of Virology has 1 P4 lab and 2 P3 labs. And we have been running one of our P3 labs for 10 years, and the P4 lab for 2 years. This whole time we've been running our virus labs, we have never had any leakage of pathogens or people being infected. This is a fact that should be known.
任何病原泄露以及人员被感染的情况，从这里，这是我们的一个事实。
The report actually went further and said that the lab has been taken over by the Chinese military. It says that Major General Chen Wei has succeeded Yuan Zhiming as the director of the WIV, and Chen Wei is a Chinese military medical sciences expert.
This is a rumor. There is no such thing.
So you absolutely deny that the Chinese military has taken over the WIV?
Yes, it is a rumor.
And the WIV is always under the management of the Chinese Academy of Sciences?
Yes.
And the Chinese military has not taken over the WIV, yeah? I just want to make double sure.
没有。
No, it is a rumor.
All right. So one of the things that's very difficult is that you have proved that you haven't done anything, while outside, for instance, politicians or congressmen, including here in this report, it is either directly accused or implied that there is a certain probability, even possibility, that the virus might have been released or accidentally escaped from this Wuhan Institute of Virology. How do you verify your claim that these were not the case? It's a tricky one because you have to prove that you're innocent. You shouldn't be doing that, but somehow the burden of proof is always on your side.
是的，我们永远不能去证明一个不存在的东西。
Yes, we can never prove something that doesn't exist. No one can prove something that does not exist. All these attacks on us from the U.S. are unfounded, as we never had this novel coronavirus in our lab, let alone handled it. Before December 30th, 2019, such a virus did not exist in our lab, so there could not possibly have been a lab leak. So this kind of attack is invalid.
不成立。
So what I
那么另外一个，我可以给一个证据，就是我们实验室。
Another piece of evidence that I can give you is that our lab has been doing research for 15 years, and all our work has been published. We also have a library of our own genetic sequences, and we have experimental records of all our work related to the virus, which are accessible for people to check. So when we did not find such a virus in all our experimental activities, we can say it did not originate from the lab. But other people don't think so, and they want us to prove it. Problem is, can we prove something that does not exist? I can say with 100% certainty that we didn't have such a virus in our lab before December 30th, 2019, because I have my lab records, I have my database, and I can show people that such a coronavirus did not exist in our lab before that date.
我们实验室没有这样的一个病毒，因为我有我的实验记录，我有我的数据库，这些都可以向别人展示，这里边没有那样的一个新冠病毒的存在。
So how do you look at the fact that, however, U.S. politicians, for instance, President Trump has said that he has seen evidence with credibility, highly credible evidence, evidence at least, that the virus might have escaped from the lab. And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has also said that he has a significant amount of evidence that the virus came from this lab. How do you understand that?
There is no evidence for what they've said.
So they were lying.
Yes, they are lying. No one has seen them provide any concrete evidence. They are lying for political reasons.
他们在撒谎，出于政治目的在撒谎。
How has this kind of political atmosphere impacted your work ever since the outbreak of the epidemic?
非常的委屈，也非常的沮丧。
It's extremely difficult and disheartening for us. As scientists, we are innocent. We hope to use our knowledge to illuminate facts about nature and provide help for people. With scientific skills and knowledge, we hope to help people have better lives.
一个技术服务，结果由于新冠这种。
However, as COVID-19 is a totally new virus, and we don't know much about it, the world is now in chaos. At this moment, we need all countries to work together and help each other to weather the hard times, instead of pointing fingers at each other and assigning blame.
渡过难关，而不是去指责、无端的指责，然后去甩锅这种现象。
What kind of specific difficulties or obstacles have you met because of this kind of bad atmosphere and finger pointing? I understand the cooperation funding with Eco Alliance, for instance, from the United States has been cut off. What other specific difficulties have you been encountering?
对于我们自己的研究团队和我们武汉病毒所来说，我们可能遇到的更多的是一些。
Our team and the Wuhan Institute of Virology have been victims of rumor and conspiracy, which puts a heavy burden on us. Our staff and their families as well have been bearing suspicion and distrust, which is really harmful.
造成的伤害非常的大，但是在这种压力之下， 我们并没有因为这些压力来影响到我们的工作。实际上，我们的工作。
But still, we never give in to this pressure or let it affect our work. In fact, we've done an excellent job. Despite this toxic environment and pressure, we never give up any possibility that might support our research. Moreover, when other research teams from home and abroad ask for help, we always lend a helping hand. All in all, we have faced great pressure, but we still manage to do our work.
So what are some specific? Yes, go ahead, please.
但是对国际合作来讲，我认为。
In terms of international collaboration, I believe that the U.S. government's shutting off international cooperation for no reason is unprecedented and has caused great harm. We know that emerging infections spread beyond boundaries. Once the emerging infectious disease broke out in one country, it is highly possible that infections will spread to other countries too.
这样一个教育带来的就是我们今后不仅仅是说减少合作，而且我们应该是更多的合作。
One vital lesson from COVID-19 is that in the future, never speak of limiting cooperation. Worldwide scientists should work together to research the pathogens in nature in advance and to conduct a risk assessment for the pathogens. We can provide know-how and help, even do preliminary and fundamental research, for example, to reserve vaccines and drugs. And in cases when new infectious diseases arise, we will be prepared and have response measures. Therefore, it is highly inappropriate for the U.S. government to shut down international cooperation.
美国政府对国际合作项目这样的一个处理的态度是非常的不合适的。
Just now you were talking about what this epidemic educated us, humanities in general, about public health crisis and its management. What specific lessons or takeaways have you or your team taken from the epidemic, especially the outbreak in Wuhan in the early days?
我想从整个疾病发生的这个规律来看，当疾病爆发的时候，
By looking at the algorithm of the pandemic in general, from the moment when the outbreak first happened, the quintessential key is having scientists specializing in different criteria to work together as one, from identifying the pathogens and patient diagnosis to clinical treatment. Throughout the whole process, we should cooperate with each other, and in this way, we can fully use technology and resources to prevent the emerging infection transmission. I believe that cooperation is the key. Faced with these unknown pathogens, we human beings are helpless due to our scarce knowledge of nature. And emerging infections, take COVID-19 for example, come from nature. We should have done preliminary research in advance. Such cooperation requires many research teams from various backgrounds working together. It will take a lot of time and patience to study and research, to blaze the rockiest trail, to solve the mystery little by little. And in this way, people can calmly confront emerging infectious diseases one after another.
然后才能够一点一点的去解开自然之谜，然后让我们人类更能够从容的应对一个又一个的新发传染病。
I remember in the early days of the outbreak, among the accusation and rumors about you, you sent out a message. You said the coronavirus is a revenge of nature on human beings. Do you still stand by that assessment? And there are also people who are saying maybe it is never possible to identify the source of the outbreak or the source of the virus. Do you think it is the case? Will human beings be able to find the source of SARS-CoV-2?
从这一类疾病的爆发的规律来看，一般就是病源从一个野生动物传到。
By looking at a typical outbreak, generally, the pathogeny originates in wild animals, and then transmits to an intermediate host, for example, one or multiple domesticated animals, before going on to infect humans. During this process, the pathogeny of the virus continues mutating from its original form. Because of this cross-species pressure, the pathogeny of the virus can evolve into one that fits human beings.
那么从我的角度来讲，因为这个新冠病毒最终造成的是人传人，一定是就是对这个中间宿主的这个来源
The lack of this link or any link can affect our efforts in tracing the source of the coronavirus. If we look at the virus transmission from a bigger picture, when I said that the coronavirus is the punishment for the uncivilized behavior of mankind, I was referring to the constant expansion, urbanization, and intensive farming. In fact, we human beings have caused damage to the whole ecosystem. The damaged ecosystem makes it possible for a virus that has been living in the wild for a long time to transmit to humans. Therefore, it is not the virus attacking us, it is our behavior that causes the constant outbreak of emerging infectious diseases. I stand by what I said.
不是病毒攻击我们，实际上是我们人类的行为造成了目前的新发传染病不断的爆发。我这样的一个结论不会变。
What will be the focus of your next step, of your next phase of research? And will you be looking for the source of SARS-CoV-2? If so, how long that process might be?
我们将来的工作，现在的重点，我认为还是就是尽快的能够生产出有效的疫苗。
I think the priority of our current and future work is to produce an effective vaccine as quickly as possible. In terms of the resurgence of COVID-19, for example, the second and third waves, I think it is possible. But from the research aspect, we may not know enough about COVID-19. Therefore, we hope we can learn more about the pathogenic biology of the coronavirus, including some pathogeny of disease caused by it, epidemiology, and so on. I think we still have a lot of work to do.
这个流行病学等等方面，我觉得我们还有很多工作要做。
Finally, how do you look at the allegations that China or Chinese scientists have been stealing IP or secrets about vaccine development from U.S. counterparts? How do you look at this kind of accusation that's been floated there?
It is nonsense. China's vaccine research is currently at the forefront. We isolated the virus strain all on our own, and the whole research procedure is being conducted by the Wuhan Institute of Virology and Wuhan Institute Biological Products Company. The vaccination is currently in research by scholar Chen Wei's team, which is their own intellectual property too. I don't know if there's any evidence at all for the U.S. to claim that we steal their research.
We don't know either, but anyway, let's hope that they can produce evidence when they make accusations like this. Thank you so much, Dr. Shi Zhengli from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this edition of The Point. As always, follow us on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. Download the CGTN app to watch our show, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thank you for your company. Bye for now.